In Dostoyevsky's book, Crime and Punishment, there's a line that says, whatever is noble for mankind is useful. And I think that there's a lot of truth in this quote, and I think Dostoevsky had a pretty insightful view of the world. I mean, he was really the first psychologist that wrote novels to some degree. And he paved the way for a lot of different kinds of works and novels. And I think that he's still, to this day, very underrated. And I had the great fortune to come across him listening to Jordan Peterson's videos years ago before he, well, is doing whatever he's doing now. I really like the Jordan Peterson from 2017 to 2020 era. And on this Semen Retention Sunday episode here on the Regal Change account, I want to talk a little bit about how everybody will remember you on semen retention. Now, what does this have to do with that which is noble and Crime and Punishment from Dostoyevsky? Well, it's that on semen retention, you are doing something useful for the benefit of mankind. And you're doing something that is not only useful for mankind, but even more so with your relationship to God. And many people will be misconstrued in their own minds by what this exactly means, because a lot of people want to believe that, well, it's about being attractive to women and it's about money and status and doing all these things to, get things out of the material world. And don't get me wrong, there's that possibility for sure. And there's that proclivity for people to see you in so far as who you are and what you are. Maybe they don't know exactly what they're looking at or how they're looking at or who they're looking at, but they will see you for who you are a little bit more discreetly. And when you're on semen retention, and so they will have this remembrance of you. It's almost as if people can't not forget you. You're almost unforgettable on semen retention. And it's so strange because you're not even trying to most of the time. And it's not to say that we ought to participate in the realms of vanity, because vanity is an expense, not only for your soul, but also financially to some degree, that will compound on interest if you're not careful. Vanity is a very, very delicate thing to play with because it's going to compound interest. And it's like a loan that you take out from the devil that accrues, 10 to 20% interest per month. It's not a good thing, and it only puts you more and more into spiritual bondage. And the debt that comes with that, so to speak, as well, there's so much debt that is involved with vanity. And if anybody has seen The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino, you'll know that at the very end of the movie, Satan says, vanity is my favorite sin. And I think there's a lot of vanity with a lot of these semen retention gurus and all that. I don't consider myself a semen retention guru at all. I'm simply a man that can show you the way to a new door that maybe you haven't seen before in your own mind. It's almost as if there's these secret passages in your psyche that can be illuminated if only you had the wherewithal to actually check the space on the wall. Like, okay, there's a certain spot here that if you just press that button, okay, there's going to be something that happens. And you just need to know where to press that button in the magic wall, so to speak, of your own mind so that you can expand it. And ultimately, this whole path and this whole journey is about expanding who you are, renewing your own mind, as Romans 12 says. And to renew your own mind, you have to recognize what needs to be renewed and ultimately what needs to happen to have you evolve, spiritually speaking. And most of us are so concerned with the seemingly perfectionist mindset, or just not even trying. It's either people are very polarized nowadays. They're trying to be full perfectionists, or they're trying to just give up entirely and not have to do anything to do with the system. And I don't think that's correct at all. I think we all need to play the system to play the system. And one of the ways in which you can do that is semen retention. Semen retention is a way that you can play the system to play the system. Because at that point, you are holding in your energy. You are vitalizing every aspect of your life, and you're harnessing. You're not leaky, right? You're not going to be accruing interest on vanity and all these things if you are actually practicing semen retention, and for the right reasons. Because make no mistake, the devil can use what God makes for good to do evil, but ultimately God will make whatever the devil does for evil for good down the line. As the Bible says, Jesus Christ is the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. Okay, he's going to end up winning in the end, but there might be some spiritual battles that we lose in the time being in between that. So it's something that we simply just have to live with, and we have to ensure that we are doing everything that we can to live nobly and righteously as possible. I think honor has become a lost, I don't even want to call it an art, because it's not really an art, but people don't really talk much about honor anymore. And the most sacred thing that we could do with another human being is just another day at this point. Sex is just, it's something that people do as a hobby instead of the most sacred act that you can perform with another person. And it's extremely damaging. And corn is extremely damaging as well. I'm convinced corn hasn't done as much damage as the actual act of cheating and everything itself, but because cheating happens more nowadays than maybe you guys would like to think. And it's crazy how even if there's a good woman or a good man, either of them have the potential to cheat still, and they could. And that's to know that you're capable of that, that takes some really dark acceptance on your end. Because women in general are instinctually deceptive. They have to be. It's a man's world, and women get to live in it. They're lucky to live in it, because look at what we've been able to build as men. Men have done amazing things. And without men maintaining the industrial system and all of the engineering and all of that, it would be so difficult for anybody to live without these men that know what they're doing in these kinds of realms. And society would not function. It just simply would not function without men. And I don't think these types of men get enough appreciation, or they get the honor that they deserve. They don't get their flowers that they deserve. And women have, with their instinctual need for being deceptive, because that's how they would survive, they are now rewarded with being instinctually deceptive, especially with the 19th Amendment. And women in power in the government and such are exploiting this to the highest degree. Okay, you'll see right now, I just saw something this morning. I don't really like to look at politics because honestly, it just makes me sick. Politics is just a disgusting thing. It destroys your soul, really. But we have to stay up to date, and we have to know what's going on in the world, and we have to see why things are happening the way that it's our sacred duty as people that are trying to make the world a better place to understand what's actually happening in the world. And so I was doing some research this morning on politics. Ugh, I hate doing that, but it is what it is, right? And I was looking at this stuff and I'm like, golly, everybody is lying to each other all the time. And the woke left is just despicable. And I'm not a conservative. I don't consider myself conservative. Okay, I don't consider myself left or right or Republican or Democrat. I'm just me. I just follow Christ and I call it how I see it. And it's just unfreaking believable how these people are so prone to forgetfulness. They're so prone to forgetfulness. And the reason that everybody remembers you on semen retention is because you're real. You have no choice but to be real because it is more of you. Have you ever noticed where sometimes you're talking with people and you don't feel like you're talking to them? You know, you're not talking to that person, you're talking to a spirit. I've felt that before, and there are sometimes people that are awake to the spiritual domain who I get that sensation with sometimes, and it's not because of their own insufficiencies. It's simply because they're sometimes incapable and simply incapable of seeing how they've been possessed because they've given away their critical faculties, and they've donated their critical faculties for the sake of easy knowledge. And when you do that, especially when you're trying to be righteous, sometimes the truth outweighs utility and sometimes utility outweighs the truth, right? And so it might be utility based for you is going to be easier to look at. But is it true? You know, is it true? And sometimes it's going to be the vice versa. So we have to be very mindful of how this is happening and why it's happening the way that it is. And we have to be very, I wouldn't necessarily say cautious, but just mindful of the types of ways in which we're living. Because do you have the resources? Do you have the reinforcements? Okay, like right now in the Regal Change Academy, we're going through the Art of War class for iron-minded wealth. And so what I've been thinking a lot about recently is just how we can discern more with the financial situation of our society and how we can actually apply that to practical terms and spiritual terms, and perhaps even combine psychology, finance, and spirituality, because they are tied together. And it's not that money is evil. Okay, I've had several dreams recently that have reflected that there are people that are watching my videos recently that are not liking what I'm saying because I'm seeing money to be a form of utility, and they don't like that. They view money as evil. And I had a particular dream last night that was very insightful for me because I was talking to the spirit of a child, and this child did not recognize the significance of finance or understanding women. And so I was like helping this child learn about this because this child was watching me and wanted to learn from me, but at the same time wasn't sure why I was acting the way that I did towards women and finance. And so I was able to talk to this spirit of the child, so to speak, and explain to him why, because he was asking. And he found it to be of great use and utility. And so what I see is that there's a lot of people who are just, they're spiritually learning how to grow into themselves right now. And one of the great things about semen retention is that you do grow into yourself naturally. You're almost forced to, without being forced to. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. Because to be forced into doing something is to kind of, well, it's not free will based. And anything that's not free will based is naturally ungodly. I truly believe that, because you have to have a sense of free will. And anybody that doesn't give you that sense of free will, now the consequences of that can be debated, but if there is somebody that's forcing you to do something and that doesn't give you any other option, that's usually someone that's trying to impose their will upon you in a way that's not necessarily good. But I think a man ought to be capable of imposing his will on his environment. Okay, he has to be the circumstance. A man must be the circumstance in the same way that a woman is simply most beautiful when she is submissive to the man's mission in her life. She's in submission to the man's mission of her life. And women, I genuinely think that women who are the most submissive are most beautiful for the longest. But ultimately, men, we are the more rare species, especially if we're attractive, godly men. We are like one in a freaking billion, it seems sometimes, because there's so few of us. And you rarely meet someone else that's actually godly. You'll see a lot of these godly men, and then when you talk to them, you're like, oh, geez, a freaking, like, this guy's a dork. This guy's a cuck. He's part of the cuck army for feminists, and he doesn't even know it. And he thinks that, because here's the thing, right? I think women ought to be treated with sincerity and affection and understanding, of course, but privately in their own home. Like when she's with the man that she's with. When it's out in public and such, no, the woman needs to do what the man says, because she has to be able to trust that leadership. But the man has to be capable of leadership to begin with. And a lot of men just simply are not capable of leadership. It's amazing how like women and men both are struggling so much in the dating market nowadays. And yet neither want to really take accountability for their position and for their cause for the reason of the collapse. And look, as I've mentioned in my last video, the collapse isn't actually a collapse. It's just an engineered fall, and a cultural engineer fall. And so what we're seeing in this day and age is that we're seeing the results of men who intentionally blind themselves to the instinctual deceptive nature of woman, because women are instinctually deceptive. And if you believe otherwise, you're like, it's hard to say, because human to human interactions and connections, I think that's fine. But to give this sense of they can do no wrong, women can do no wrong, and women are these angels and innocent. Men, if you still believe this, you're kidding yourself. And I would have not believed it. So I understand the level of deception goes very, very deep. Because 10 years ago, if you told me that married women, like married women, not just a woman, there would be married women that are trying to be with me in my like physical form now. There are multiple married women who have tried to sleep with me and have told me verbatim, we can keep it a secret. If you told me that 10 years ago, I would have said you're a freaking liar. There's no way. So I totally understand why some men just, they can't accept that women are capable of this, because in our minds, men, we idealize love. We don't see love as this business transaction, but it is. And this is why I say it's important for a man to have love for women, but not fall in love with women. Women and children can fall in love because they're women and children. They get the luxury of that. But there's simply no way that you can look at a woman and think to yourself, like, she's not designed to be intellectual. She's not designed to be logical. She's designed to nurture and to be beautiful, to continue on the species. Like, and I'm not just, that's not what I think. That's just essentially what the Bible says. And the punishment for Adam and Eve both distinguish these particular attribute traits for each gender very, very clearly. Okay, women have their sorrow multiplied. Okay, so they're meant to be tormented torturers to some degree because they're always suffering and they have to be more in more pain with childbirth and all this. So I genuinely see women as these tormented torturers because that is how they have to live. They're blessed with this emotional capacity, and yet they're cursed with it to some degree as well, because that literally was the curse that God put on Adam and Eve. You know, and the consequence, really, maybe not the curse, but it was a consequence. And Adam, well, what is Adam's consequence for partaking in the tree of forbidden fruit and knowledge and good and evil? Well, he has to work the rest of his life and by the sweat of his brow just to get the daily bread. Okay? So men have to work. We have to work. That is what we're meant to do. And you men who are rebelling against the system by playing video games and eating Cheetos, now I'm just speaking about that as the archetype because that's like the archetype of what these men do, right? You men that are doing this, you are not rebelling against the system. You're rebelling against God. And I think that that's way more worse than you think. And the reason being is because, well, at least I would rather fight the system by playing the system to play the system and not rebelling against God, but rebelling against the system than I would ever choose to rebel against God. Because I simply just don't see the point in anything. Because it can feel like that. It can feel like the world is pointless at this point. But this is why semen retention is so important. It's because you actually find and discover the purpose of your life again. You actually remember, and people will remember you. People will remember you as someone that was an example. You lived the example. You didn't need to display it and talk about it and be overtly communicative about it. You just lived it. And there's something about you that makes you a spiritual outlaw to that degree as well. I've felt very much so the last few days like a spiritual outlaw. And it's profound, and yet it's also, I wouldn't say it's concerning, but it's just kind of discouraging as well sometimes, because you feel as though you're doing everything you can to pour your spirit into the people, and it's like they don't care. Like, they just don't care. And it's not that they don't care about you, it's that they don't even care about themselves. And that's what's hard to watch. And a lot of these people out here, they don't care. I mean, look how many people are obese. Look how many people just fall, like the men that follow around their women. You know, just, oh, yes, dear, happy wife, happy life. No. Y'all are just like drones. You are fiat drones. Fiat drones feeding the fiat feminist system. And that is just, because you know what they say, alpha fucks and beta bucks, right? And the reason for that is because beta bucks, okay, yeah, betas are fiat drones. They are. They're fiat currency drones. And that's why it's important to get gold and silver, to invest in yourself, to get Bitcoin, okay? Get these precious metals, because that's psychological safety. Okay, it's psychological safety, and it's like if crap hits the fan, then you have that safety. Bitcoin, I don't know why people are so like, oh, is Bitcoin a scam? It's like, have you done any research at all? Have you done any research at all with Bitcoin? Because I understand, again, I've been there. I've been there with Bitcoin where I thought, well, because I can't hold it, like it's not tangible, so why would I think that it's real? Well, it's like, have you looked at the freaking dollar? Like when it finally clicked, like, oh my gosh, this dollar is fake. It's monopoly money. It's, Yeah, I can hold it in my hand so it feels tangible. And if you think about this too, right? Gold and silver really aren't the best ways to store money either. It is a good psychological safety and such, but there's a reason why even on the gold standard, we had printed bills and coins. It's because it was to be a smaller unit of measurement for the gold and silver. It was just going to be easier that way. So gold and silver in some ways have already failed as a monetary system. And Bitcoin is a potential for, I mean, you can just scan a QR code and it's that easy. And it'll take 5 to 18 seconds to transfer in the blockchain system. So otherwise, you'll, even if you pay cash, you have the other person that has to, count the cash to get your cash back and all that. Like, let's say it's like $18.12 and you give them a 20. Okay, well, now they have to get back. Like, it's going to take the same amount of time and less cognitive, not cognitive function, but unnecessary cognitive problem solving, I suppose. So you can save that time for other things, but again, these tools can be made for good or they can be made for not so good. It's up to us as human beings to discern how to use these tools. Like social media is a tool. 100% social media is a tool. I would not have the Regal Change Academy the way that I have it today if it weren't for social media. And so we get to have conversations with people all over the world. I get to have one-on-one sessions with people all over the world. Okay, there's people, I've had people in one-on-one sessions with over 20 countries by now. That's so cool. And you know what's crazy? Is that we're not so different. Everybody goes through the same types of trials and tribulations. It just looks culturally different. It's just the culture that looks different. But it's the same type of trials, it's the same type of way. We're really not so different. And when you're on semen retention, you're going to recognize this. You're going to recognize that life is a little bit more beautiful because of this fact. So I hope that that was insightful and useful for people out there. I hope that you all have a blessed day. Stay blessed. Peace. Until next time.